Story 1. When I was in the army, a man in our unit was caught sexually abusing his preschool-aged daughter. He jumped from a fourth-floor window and survived. He became a paraplegic and went to prison. Story 2. I worked for a man who was very entrepreneurial but very stubborn. At one point he realized he had about $2 million in assets if he included his house, and I told him he should retire since he was already 55 and could enjoy it. He refused and invested all of his money in a new venture. It was an arcade. The city where he built it did not allow arcades. He dug in his heels and decided to fight the authorities. He lost the building, his investment, and his house to creditors, and last I heard he had to move in with his girlfriend and her mother. I hope he bounced back, but I doubt it. Story 3. A family member spent the couple's entire savings and retirement on cancer treatment. She did not file claims through insurance because she did not want her husband to find out and worry. He later developed his own health problems and became unable to work, so they are now financially dependent on their adult children. Story 4. Local man in my town had a good life, multiple children and a lovely wife. He was an ex-Olympian who transitioned into a new career after retiring from sports. I knew his children. After his Olympic career, he started an investment firm offering mutual funds. He attracted a number of initial investors, including a very close childhood friend and that friend's elderly parents. Something went wrong and he lost a lot of money. Instead of coming clean, he essentially ran a Ponzi scheme. Years went by, possibly decades, and then it all caught up with him. He wrote confession letters and sent them to his victims, then rode his bike into the woods and disappeared. At first he was missing and everyone was confused and concerned. But when the confessions came to light, people realized he had fled. It was a massive scandal in such a small town. 2 years later he turned himself in, served his time, and is now living a relatively normal life. It was major news at the time because he had stolen or lost millions, including the entire retirement fund of his childhood friend and that friend's elderly parents. The friend was furious. Story 5. When I was at university, I worked at a large grocery store as a cashier and later as a night packer. The day supervisor at the front of the store, who had worked there for a decade, was caught stealing more than $100,000 from the cash registers. All the cashiers had to count their float to make sure it balanced at the end of their shift, and then she would recount it. She palmed small bills so the tills were slightly short, but it went unnoticed. If a cashier particularly annoyed her, she would remove larger notes until the cashier was fired. They were all teenagers, so it was dismissed as mistakes when giving change. She was caught after a long-running fight with the night supervisor. The day supervisor tried to take part of the night supervisor's float to make her appear to be stealing and have her fired. The night supervisor suspected this, kept meticulous records, and informed the store owner, who later found cash in the day supervisor's locker. To make matters worse, the store manager not only knew about the theft but was having an affair with the day supervisor. They were both fired and divorced. The day supervisor was charged, and I believe she served some jail time. Story 6. She trusted the wrong person, despite all the evidence we presented that he could not be trusted. She lost her money, her home, her relationships with her children and other family members, and her grip on reality. He became her world and stripped her of everything. She kept her job because one of them had to work to fund the lifestyle he chose. Story 7. An apprentice baker at the restaurant where I worked managed to get a copy of the office key. One day she went in, took a bunch of paychecks, laid them out on her prep table, and proceeded to mobile deposit about a dozen checks into her bank account. All on camera. To this day, I have no idea what she was thinking or how she expected not to get caught. It was a pretty open and shut case. She was convicted of felony embezzlement and a litany of other charges. She was 19 and in college. She was expelled from college and served some time in prison. I do not know what happened to her after that. It was a while ago, and I assume she is out now, but that was incredibly foolish. She torched her entire life and career in a few minutes. Story 8. He raped his 13-year-old stepdaughter 6 weeks after marrying her mother. She told her mother, who called the police. He was arrested but served only 2 years. That felony conviction as a sex offender will last a lifetime. We don't talk anymore. Story 9. In 2023, I was pulling out of a Wendy's with my young son in the back seat. In the McDonald's parking lot next door, I heard what I thought was fireworks. I looked over and saw a young, baby-faced man holding a pistol over a woman's body. He shot her. I cannot remember if it was more than once. My son asked, "Daddy, what was that?" I said, "It was fireworks, kid." The man locked eyes with me. He looked like a little boy playing hide and go seek, a haunting face. Then he started running toward me. I floored the pedal. We went to a nearby grocery store and ate. I had to appear calm and say, "These crazy kids with their fireworks. I thought they would hit our car." That man ruined his life by taking the life of his manager. He is in Fulton County Jail. I read the news story later that day. I still have dreams about it. Story 10. My dad refused to get a colonoscopy and is now dying from colon cancer. Colon cancer is one of the most preventable cancers when detected early by colonoscopy. Story 11. Three friends fresh out of high school decided to build homemade bombs and blow up portable toilets. They were smart and college-bound. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives found them after the third or fourth explosion. One of them turned on the others and led a good life. The other two went to prison for a couple of years. It was an absolute waste of their potential. Story 12. A friend of mine stole and sold a Japanese katana that his father had brought home from World War II to buy an Atari 2600. His father found out and demanded it be returned. The friend refused to return it or refund the money, so his father filed a police report. That left him with a record at 18 and hindered his attempts to join the military. Story 13. A man in my neighborhood was a big name in town. He served on our homeowners association board, coached his children's soccer team, and was active in the parent-teacher association. When the coronavirus pandemic occurred and everything was on lockdown, he was exposed. It turned out he had another family in another state. I have no idea how he managed all of that. Story 14. My oldest brother took his life a few years ago. His best friend had already been spiraling after a breakup with his girlfriend, the mother of his child. A month after my brother's death, he took his baby daughter and jumped from a monument. He died instantly, and the baby had to be taken off life support a few days later because the head injuries were too severe. Story 15. My brother was adopted from foster care as a baby and was the beloved only boy in our family. We lived in a small town where he was treated like a little king. All the little old ladies on our street kept his favorite snacks on hand for when he rode up on his bike to say hello. He was so empathetic and sweet as a child, but the moment he hit puberty he changed. Between the ages of 12 and 22 he did the following. He shoved our baby sister into a fire ant mound. He started using the N-word. We are a white Hispanic household. He stole lunch money and field trip fees from our younger sister, causing her to miss lunches and field trips. Once she had to sit alone in the library while the rest of her class went to a theme park. He was accepted into a prestigious boarding school for gifted children but was expelled for smoking marijuana, stealing several parents' credit cards, and racking up bills by ordering food, then blaming the one black student in his dorm. He dropped out of school to become a professional video game player, but that did not last long. He got a woman pregnant. Once he realized the family would only provide childcare if he treated us with basic human decency, he stopped trying to have any relationship with his child. He called my Asian American husband slurs and said he was not a real man because he does not work with his hands. My husband is a veterinarian. He has ruined his own life. He is now a lonely, radicalized young man who is not invited to the family Thanksgiving, which is a half-hour away from his apartment. Story 16. I am a white man married to a Korean woman. Her best friend, also Korean, is married to another white man. A few weeks ago, the four of us were having dinner with a third couple, both white, at a fairly upscale restaurant. About 2/3 of the way through what had been an ordinary, almost bland dinner, the husband from that third couple suddenly blurted out, "You two are so lucky. I have a huge thing for Asian women. They are very attractive, and I have wanted to sleep with one my whole life." His wife reacted instantly. She threw wine in his face, shouted at him, and stormed out of the restaurant. Apparently, he had been sleeping on the couch, and she filed for divorce. I am sure there were other issues that led to her decision, but from my perspective it looks like he ruined his marriage with one sentence. Story 17. The thread is 2 hours old and there is no mention of gambling. I know several people who are ruined by gambling. Story 18. I had anorexia for 12 years, from age 16 to 26. In my early 20s, I was hospitalized for fainting and psychotic episodes. My parents and friends didn't know what to do. At 85 pounds, I didn't want to be seen in public. It ruined my social life, diminished any opportunities one had, and completely broke my sense of self. Recovery has felt like waking up from a coma. I don't know what it didn't take away from me. It took everything except my life, and sometimes surviving feels more pathetic than triumphant. For years into recovery, while my mind is clearer and better than it has ever been, I am still mourning the youth I wasted to illness and experiencing its consequences to this day. Story 19. This is a story I heard secondhand in the 1980s. An evening manager at a service business that dealt with the public frequently worked late to make sure the cash journal for the day balanced and never took vacations. Eventually, they took a week off, and a customer came in with a question about their invoice. The cash invoice the customer had and the one on file were off by $20. The manager had been adjusting and reprinting invoices for cash transactions and keeping the difference. The money was all spent as soon as they had it. They had no assets, no savings, and no job. No charges were laid because the owners decided that this person, in their 60s, had already done enough damage to their own life. Story 20. Going to trial without a lawyer is unwise. Remember, anyone who represents themselves in legal matters has a fool for a client. Story 21. I know someone who got in very deep with a multi-level marketing company. She completely bought into the false positivity and the fake it till you make it mentality and portrayed a false account of what was happening. She earned trips, claimed to be making thousands of dollars every month, said she was living the dream, and that she would retire her husband soon. Eventually, it all unraveled. She was deeply in debt, which she had been keeping from her husband. She had been ordering large quantities of product to maintain her status and rank, and had rented a storage unit to store it. She had also taken money from her children's savings accounts. She ended up divorced and destitute, and her husband somehow ended up with all her product in the divorce. I have no idea what he did with it. Story 22. I had a lawyer blatantly slander me during a civil case that did not really involve me. My husband's ex sued him. She has mental health and substance use issues. The lawyer had never met me or seen me in person. The judge allowed the statements, but the state attorney general's office learned of it. And now everything involving that lawyer and the judge is being brought into question. Story 23. I worked at a private art college as co-director of fabrication in the sculpture department. My co-director, about 55 years old, seemed to have it made. He was married to an architect and had a 10-year-old son. They owned 2 homes, an impressive brownstone in Chicago and a custom-built house on the east shore of Lake Michigan. He fell in love with a 23-year-old graduate student who had a crush on him and with whom he had inappropriate sexual contact a few times. He divorced his wife to be with her. The wife was not sympathetic. She left, took their son, and wanted nothing to do with him. He was not the primary breadwinner in the household. After that, the student finished school and moved on without him. He had destroyed an enviable life for a year of lust with a student. It was very sad. Story 24. When I was 15, my father was arrested for solicitation of a minor. Thankfully, he was caught in an internet sting. He lost his job, and my mother separated from and ultimately divorced him. In the criminal case, he received a very favorable plea deal. He faced up to 10 years in prison, plus lifetime registration as a registered sex offender. Instead, he received 2 years of probation and 25 years of registration. He was a software engineer, and at that time he worked on multiple federal projects, including with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. When he finally found a new job, he spent the last dozen or so years of his life designing library software. Story 25. He had a full-ride scholarship to college. He tanked his grade point average in his first year by not trying in class and lost the scholarship. He dropped out, started doing manual labor, and his girlfriend of a few months became pregnant. Story 26. My dad trusted someone who was brilliant and corrupt to the core. He put up the money to start a business and lost everything, including the house, because he would not declare bankruptcy. He considered bankruptcy dishonorable. He started from scratch at 53 and rebuilt his career but never attained the same level of material success. He was a positive force for good no matter his circumstances, and I miss him every day. Story 27. I had more credit card debt than I could reasonably repay. One credit card company sued me. I filed a consumer proposal, which led to the lawsuit being withdrawn. For 5 years, I paid an agreed amount each month. I completed the consumer proposal and all my debts were discharged. The only credit card I now have has a $50 limit. I use it to pay for parking at machines that do not accept debit and for similar small expenses. I cannot get myself into another financial hole with such a small limit. I do not have any overdrafts on my bank accounts because I do not want to be tempted to misuse them. I am determined to do better. Story 28. My father abused our family, including me. He terrorized us because of his unprocessed trauma. He is now in his 80s and will die estranged and alone. Story 29. Being a paragliding instructor for 15 years, I have been to a few funerals. A hang glider pilot died just below me in a thermal. I was so busy trying not to die myself that I did not even notice. Story 30. I knew a man who did not deserve his fate. He was a hard worker and risked everything he had saved to buy a business. Around the same time, he met a single mother. Everyone who knew her warned him that she would ruin his life. He did not listen. She cheated on him several times and eventually abandoned her child with him. He cared for the child, and a few years later she returned wanting the child. The child did not remember her and refused to go. She then accused him of molesting the child. He spent everything he had fighting the charges and lost his business. He was exonerated when she admitted that she had made it all up. The child was left deeply traumatized by the ordeal. He ended up broke, friendless, and homeless. Story 31. Someone I know lost everything he had and went into debt trying to make money in cryptocurrency. He became utterly obsessed. There were times when I was with him and he barely acknowledged my presence because he was watching the market. Story 32. A man I know was in charge of a city department. He spent his days gambling away his daughter's college fund. It came out when people complained that the city truck he was driving was parked at the Veterans of Foreign Wars post all day. He was fired from his easy job and had to tell his wife what he had done. She divorced him. I never heard whether his daughter ever forgave him. Story 33. He cheated on his first wife, raised his second wife's son, then cheated on her and abandoned them both. He was laid off, then pursued the first woman he met at a new job. She did not want to rush things. He wanted to be married within a year. His ex-wife found out and, he claimed, returned, asking for more money. He told his close friends and his new girlfriend that she had cancer. He ghosted them all for a month, then returned to work as if nothing had happened, saying he had been caring for his ex-wife. He was fired because he could not provide evidence for his leave of absence. He resembled someone who tried to marry within months, was abusive, moved into a crack house, and died by suicide. His roommates looted his room. That story involved drugs. Story 34. This took place in Northern Virginia about 30 years ago. My roommate drove me to the auto parts store early one morning. On the way back, we were waiting at a stoplight as the first vehicles in the left lane of a 4-lane road. A man came tearing up to our left, followed shortly by a police officer with lights on and siren blaring. They both turned left at the light into a neighborhood. A few seconds later, the man came back into the intersection and did a short spin out. The police officer pulled up, drew his firearm, and ordered the man out of the car. The man got out and put his hands on the roof. As the officer started to put handcuffs on him, the man turned and began striking the officer. The officer drew his baton and struck the man a couple of times. The man grabbed the baton from the officer and began hitting him. Finally, the officer drew his firearm and shot the man twice. The man died on the way to the hospital. I read the newspaper the next day. It turned out the man had a warrant for unpaid child support. He had been sitting in his car in a parking lot when someone reported a suspicious person. When the police officer pulled up to investigate, the man fled, dead in a matter of minutes over unpaid child support. Story 35. My father was successful in his 20s as a mortgage underwriter. He met my mother, and then my sister, brother, and I were born. Things were going well until they were not. Despite having everything at the time, he started gambling. It began with slot machines and progressed to betting on horse races. In 2008, the housing market crashed and things got much worse. He chased the high and borrowed money from the wrong people. They even threatened my family's safety until the debt was paid. My mother decided to divorce him. She was broke after the housing crash and became a single mother to 3 children. But she did her best to raise us and worked extremely hard. She is now a successful mortgage broker. My father lost everything and became homeless. He became so addicted that he started conning and scamming people for money. When his father died, he stole his identity and racked up $30,000 in debt. One time he even stole his girlfriend's life savings and gambled it away. He somehow never went to jail. I don't know how. I was the only child who spoke to him in the end. I tried to understand addiction even though I did not understand his gambling, and I tried to be there for him while keeping him at a distance and away from money and personal information. I refused to let him move in with me because every time he did, he would find a way to con someone. He did it to my older brother who has schizophrenia when our brother let him move in. My father took the rent money my brother gave him and gambled it away. They were evicted, but my mother made sure my brother was not left homeless and found a trailer for him. My father became homeless again and no one spoke to him for years, including me. He was dying from diabetes and heart disease. It was a slow death. His mother eventually let him move in even after he had stolen her late husband's identity because she felt pity for him. He was there until the end. He died alone in his sleep, begging my mother, sister, and me to visit him one last time. We were going to Disneyland, and after all the hurt he had caused us, we decided not to see him. He often said he was dying, but he behaved as if he had 9 lives, so we thought he was manipulating us again. This is the same man who gambled everything and even left my mother alone in the hospital after a cesarean section when she had just given birth to my twin sister and me. He abused us as children while he was actively addicted. His death was still hard for me because I was the only one who would listen to his deathbed regrets. He had no more time to make up for it. His body was turned over to the county. There was no funeral and no one would have shown up. It is wild how gambling changed him. He lost everything and died alone because of the choices he made every day. Story 36. A former classmate is currently facing an ongoing situation. She had been one of the most popular girls in school since elementary school, went to college on her parents' dime, met her future husband, and married him. They had a couple of children, took family vacations every year, were active in church, and maintained a large social circle. She also held a fairly good job in a relatively independent role. It later emerged that her workplace had been investigating her for some time and found that she had stolen $350,000 from the company over several years. She has been arrested, and the investigation may not be complete. Authorities are still recovering funds. She will likely serve prison time, will probably never hold a job at that level or in her field again, and the family will likely lose everything paying restitution. Her marriage and parental rights are uncertain. The children have been pulled out of school, and the husband has become somewhat reclusive. I do not see how any of this was worth the risk. I feel most sorry for the children, who will spend a significant period of their childhood with a single father while their mother is in prison. Story 37. Our company takes top employees on vacations every year. A few years ago, the trip was to Mexico. One employee ignored the rule requiring employees to remain at the resort. He went into the city, solicited prostitutes, and then refused to pay them. He was kidnapped in the middle of nowhere. His attackers emptied his bank accounts and held him for ransom. According to reports, the company paid $10,000 to secure his release. He was escorted by police to the airport to fly home, was fired, and reportedly his wife left him. Story 38. I noticed you posted this question to 7 or 8 subreddits today. In the middle of all that cross-posting, you posted a question about gun maintenance. I am not trying to assume anything. For all I know, you could be gathering anecdotes for a project for your psychology class, but I genuinely hope you are doing okay. Regarding your question, I have seen 2 people ruin their lives beyond repair. Both cases involved being inappropriate with children. One was a woman I went to school with who became a high school teacher and preyed on a student. The other was someone I knew personally who was convicted of molesting his stepdaughter. Everyone else I know who seriously harmed their lives and survived, with or without drugs and alcohol being involved, has been able to bounce back at least partially. Being on the sex offender registry is the only thing I have personally seen that has ruined someone's life beyond repair, and in those cases they deserved it. Story 39. My dad told me about a coworker when I was a child. In the 1970s, she won the largest slot machine payout in Las Vegas at the time. She was in the newspapers, grinning and holding a giant symbolic check. However, he said that to win this record-breaking amount she had gambled away her life savings, house, car, and her relationship with her husband and children. They divorced and the children would not speak to her. She lost more than she won. Maybe that is why to this day I do not like to gamble. Story 40. This one is a doozy because it is not just 1 life ruined, but 3 with collateral damage. I worked with a man in retail who had been a medical technician caring for patients in long-term comas. He quit that job after an incident that left him so damaged mentally he could not return to work. He had been assigned to a 21-year-old patient with massive head trauma who was not expected to wake up anytime soon, if ever. The patient had been chatting with a girl he met online who told him she was 20. The first time they met in person, he realized she was much younger and broke things off when she confessed to being 16. The 16-year-old took rejection badly and paid a friend $100 to beat the 21-year-old senseless with a baseball bat. They were caught quickly and both received fairly heavy sentences. This was before the recent trend toward leniency for minors. 3 young lives destroyed in a matter of minutes because one man did the right thing. Story 41. A man at my workplace had a good job, was married to a coworker, and had a solid future ahead. He was caught viewing pornography on his work computer during the workday. What the heck? He was escorted out, so it was not a quiet resignation but an undignified exit. Story 42. My mother is currently dying of cancer that was treatable for years. Why? Because she believed right-wing conspiracy lies that told her doctors were evil and that she could cure it herself with vegetable shakes and faith in Jesus. Story 43. I watched a friend run through a series of very bad choices in boyfriends. She went from making enough money to buy her house and car outright, to investing well for retirement, taking regular vacations overseas, and having the things we want in life. Her son ended up in the hospital because one of the men severely beat him and began stalking her. The next man stole her car and wallet, and had been taking out credit cards and other accounts in her name. The third had an extensive criminal record for stalking, domestic assault, attempted murder, and so on. He severely beat her and nearly broke her neck. She lost everything. She lost custody of her son after the second boyfriend, lost her job, and her money evaporated. Her health is wrecked. She is partially paralyzed and lives with her elderly parents. Story 44. My brother is in prison for shooting someone in the head while on probation for a series of gang-related crimes. He did not kill him, but the sentence is effectively life. Story 45. My ex-partner fell into right-wing spaces during coronavirus disease 2019 when we had recurring pregnancy losses. He ended up in Telegram and 4chan echo chambers. Suddenly he expressed hatred toward women, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender communities, and anyone who is not a white man. I did not learn about this until the federal police showed up with a warrant for him. Once the truth was revealed, he began showing aggression and escalated to severe domestic violence. I was trapped with him and pregnant with our second child at that time. The timeline for this was early 2019 to 2022. I escaped mid-pregnancy in early 2022. He became a devoted Nazi and is very involved in Nazi groups, which he leads, but now lives in a park and shoplifts food. He went from a six-figure job, a happy family, and a comfortable lifestyle to that. I first met him in 2011, and we were very close for about 7 years. He was a good person originally. Story 46. A friend kept returning to her husband despite his physical and emotional abuse. Each time she ended up in the hospital, she refused to blame him and went back. The depraved acts he committed were horrifying. Eventually, he left because he grew bored of her. She moved to a new city and he continued his life as if nothing had happened. He is 50 now, works at a bar, and has just had a daughter with a coworker in their mid-20s. I hope he has changed for the better, but I fear predators will continue until they are stopped. Story 47. My brother really lost his mind about religion. It was a number of things that prompted the turn to religion, the biggest of which was a blonde with large breasts. He became a born-again Christian in an effort to end up with her. She used him for 3 years and was surprised and flattered when he thought they were on the path to marriage. He was mistaken. This happened after he paid for half of a new car for her, cleaned her mother's house, and cooked for both of them while holding down a relatively well-paying job at an electronics retailer. After that, he joined the army and later married the chaplain's daughter. That was another abyss that ended after 4 children and 24 years of marriage. During that time, he even became a pastor for their Baptist offshoot. The organization sent him to different parishes. Every time he started to have an impact, he was sent elsewhere to start all over again. After seeing that Jesus did not pay the bills, he stopped. In effect, he lost everything that made him decent. Humor, wit, some insight, and a skeptical nature. All of that is gone for good. He is probably the blandest person I know, which is a damn shame. He was so sure that adopting the born-again label would get him what he wanted. He was used instead. In short, be yourself. You will do better than trying to suck up to people. Story 48. My ex was not good with money. He did not want a divorce, but he kept calling me names. So I left. He accused me of things that should have ruined me, but after a few years my life improved while his declined. He is earning 6 figures and yet he might become homeless. I am not sure what he is doing with his money. He did not drink much, and as far as I know it was not drugs. I think it might be fast food. On his declaration of income, he claimed he spends 95% of his income on bills. However, he is not paying his bills. Child support is always late and not the amount ordered by the judge. He will not buy the children's clothes. Rent is extremely overdue. He may become homeless soon. Story 49. I read in this thread about a surgeon who was supposed to go to space but was jailed for 2 years for unnecessarily amputating his own legs because it was a fetish of his. Story 50. I had a client who lost nearly half of his 401k retirement account in the housing crash of 2008. Tired of seeing it decline, he withdrew all $250,000 and deposited it into his checking account, right when the market was at the bottom. Tax time. He paid about half of it in taxes, including a 10% penalty for early distribution. Today, he lives on Social Security alone. If he had left the account intact, he would probably have about $1.5 million and a much more comfortable retirement. Story 51. Many people do this by becoming pregnant with someone, sometimes with the wrong person. Story 52. I have seen many women ruin their lives over a man they love, and people who have children too early often become stuck in poverty. Story 53. My cousin had a secret online sports betting habit. He had to come clean when his $250,000 credit card debt came to light. It ruined his marriage. Now he is divorced and barely sees his children. He lost everything. Story 54. My father is dead now, thankfully. He was an awful person, a terrible father, and an abusive husband. He carried bitterness and anger about things he made no effort to address or change inside him for years. It ruined his marriage, his relationship with his children, and his retirement. Bitterness doesn't just wreck your soul. It wrecks your life. If he had been braver, kinder, and more self-aware and had addressed his issues, he might have died a relatively happy person. As the youngest, he forced me to carry many of the family responsibilities because he didn't trust my brother and sister. It made me older than I was. I feel like I'm 60, and I'm turning 40 next year. He taught me to face my life and my issues. I don't want to turn out like him. Story 55. I knew a man who met a woman 15 years older than him in a bar in a foreign country. She was freshly divorced with 2 children and was not working. He worked in investment banking in the world's financial capital. She cheated on him, lied frequently, and was caught, and caused scenes when visiting his friends and family. Family members were woken in the middle of the night by them screaming at each other on the phone. We were all concerned about how serious the relationship had become. They broke up during her first visit to his home country to meet his family. Everyone congratulated him and shared what they had found out about her. A few months later, he became determined to move to the closest major city to her in her country while still claiming they were broken up. His company would not transfer him there immediately, so he had an outburst and threatened to quit. He had no formal qualifications. He had started as an apprentice and worked his way up over 7 years. He was convinced he could find a job in the new city based only on his experience. They offered him a sabbatical while they tried to sort out his transfer, as they did not want him to destroy his life. During the wait, he began lashing out at everyone. He threw and broke things in his parents' home, called them awful names and yelled at them, bailed on friends he had invited to stay, and disappeared in the middle of the night. The late-night screaming phone calls with the woman resumed. On a night out, his brother expressed concerns about his behavior. Since meeting the woman, he lost it, screamed, swore, and threw things in the bar, and was kicked out. At home, he threw furniture, ripped doors off their hinges, screamed and swore at his parents, and said awful things to his only brother and his wife, waking the neighbors. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened and did not apologize. A week later, he moved to her country and married her in secret. She started multiple businesses under her married name. He lost all his friends from back home because of his behavior. His brother and sister-in-law do not speak to him because he never apologized to them or his parents. His parents walk on eggshells around him to avoid cutting off contact. Now he feels extremely isolated and as if he has no family while living in a foreign country. His marriage is on and off and they have only been married a year and a half. I have no idea what caused him to go off the deep end. He did not use drugs or drink excessively. It is shocking. Story 56. My friend's dad once went gambling and came back with £50,000. He was so excited he went back out and by the next morning had lost enough that they lost the house. He starts a new family every 3 to 4 years, and my friend has no idea how many half-siblings she has, but she thinks maybe 30. Story 57. Maybe not completely life-ruining, but I know a man who had sex with a stripper at his bachelor party despite all the other men trying to tell him not to, because it was scummy and they were not going to keep it a secret. His engagement obviously ended and with it the sale of their properties, and she got the dogs. Everybody in the friend group abandoned him and supported the bride. I am still friends with her. His family ostracized him for months. Strangely enough, he dated the stripper for a short time, but it did not last. This was a few years ago, and to this day I do not think anyone has been in touch with him. Story 58. My mother is involved with someone she met in jail. She had never used drugs or alcohol and had never been sexually active. She was caring for a person who later died. The family gave her the deceased person's card before the death so she could get necessities and told her she could spend a little on herself. They did not tell her to keep the card and spend large sums of money with it. Story 59. A group of friends in their mid-30s. Married couples where husbands and wives were friends with each other. Let's say Bob and Mary are couple 1, Tammy and John are couple 2, my wife and I are couple 3, and there were other men in the friend group. Tammy was always kind of counterculture, so they agreed that Bob and Tammy could flirt and cuddle. Mary was okay with it since Tammy was her best friend and she trusted them. She considered it just human contact. John was uncomfortable with the idea but knew Tammy would be Tammy and trusted his friend Bob to keep things in check. One night Bob woke Mary in the middle of the night. He admitted that one thing led to another and they may have gone further than they were supposed to. Mary asked what that meant. Bob didn't want to get into detail but admitted mistakes were made and things went too far. The guys went to a buddy's house for an event. The women stayed at Bob and Mary's house to drink wine and watch trash television. My wife had no idea any of this happened until she noticed Mary and Tammy seemed off. Tammy decided she needed to leave, so my wife asked what was going on between them. Mary filled her in. At the end of the night, Bob, John, and I returned to Bob and Mary's house. My wife, who had stayed, gave me a look that I knew meant something was up. Bob said, "Well, what did you do to make Tammy leave?" Mary replied, "Excuse me. What did you just say to me?" John said, "Guys, not like this. I was thinking, what's going on here?" Bob said, "Well, may as well get this out there because I'm sure the girls have talked all about it." Mary said, "We did not get into it. I just explained Tammy and I are having a fight. I didn't go into detail because I wanted to protect you." I stepped up and asked, "What are you guys talking about?" John said that earlier the four of them had been talking about opening up their marriages a bit. He thought it was bullshit, but the others were into it. Tammy had always wanted to swing, but he didn't like it. I said, "You mean the four of you?" Mary said, "No, this was his idea. Bob had been wanting something like sister wives and Tammy was on board. The four of us agreed he and she could do some stuff, but then he came home the other night and told me he felt so guilty and was so sorry because they accidentally got to fucking." Bob said, "No, I didn't say we fucked, just that things went too far a few times." John said, "The rules were cuddling. Nudity was okay. Light touching was fine, but nothing past second base. You say you went past that multiple times. We know what that means. At that point, it was a good time to leave, so we did." Over the next few months, this destroyed the friend group. They tried to act normal, but Bob became increasingly bitter. We staged multiple man-to-man talks about, "Dude, what the fuck?" He alternated between rage and self-pity, then said, "I knew what I was doing, and I did it because Mary was a bitch who stopped putting out and John wasn't a good friend. I wanted to hurt them, and you guys have been shit. Friends too." One of us replied, "You gonna try fucking my wife too?" He insisted they did not fuck. They just crossed boundaries. We said we had the boundaries. There's only so many ways to cross them. We cut contact after that. The friend group split along pro-Bob and anti-Bob lines. Some viewed his behavior as a mental health issue deserving sympathy, but others saw it as manipulation and gaslighting. Tammy and John divorced. Fast forward a few years. I'm working in a courthouse, and before court starts, a group comes in. I recognize a face. It's Bob and one of our mutual friends. I thought, what the fuck did Bob do? He had assaulted Mary and strangled her. She fought him off, called her dad. And Bob split. They had been married for 12 years and had 2 sons under 8. Bob was a karate instructor, so after a series of bad choices, he ended up divorced, living on a friend's couch, lost his job, and avoided jail time by taking a plea that prevents him from being employed in positions requiring criminal background checks. He would have had a comfortable life in the suburbs with 2 kids and a loving wife who worked full-time and did the cooking and cleaning so he could teach karate and play guitar. He also destroyed multi-decade friendships. There was a time we were brothers, but that was gone. And now he's just one of hundreds of accused who find themselves before me in court. Funnily enough, he called me a judgmental douche in one of our interventions because I didn't approve of his behavior even when some of us were trying to help. Story 60. I married the wrong person. If you have to ask, the answer is no. The breakup will be less painful than the marriage. Story 61. My college roommate's mother was in the military, so he pretty much had it made. Free rides to anywhere in the world, and veterans' education benefits covered his tuition. He worked at Blockbuster for spare cash but was fired for stealing digital video discs. He then stopped attending classes and was kicked out of school. I'm not sure what he is doing now. Story 62. My friend became pregnant at 13. She kept the baby but lost most of her friends and could not participate in after-school activities or hang out on weekends. She was a top student and is now a mother who is fortunate to have a minimum wage job. Story 63. Even after surviving every form of childhood abuse, after fighting back and defeating the bullies outside the so-called safety of home, and after securing the education and career of their dreams, they still, for no logical reason, believe every terrible thing that happened to them was deserved. No matter how good they are or what they give back or accomplish, They see themselves as a stain and believe those things would not have happened if they had been truly worthy of a good life. They crave boring, predictable regularity. But all they know is chaos, uncertainty, abuse, and misery, and people cling to what is familiar. This destroys lives. Story 64. My cousin became pregnant just before she and her ex broke up. She decided to keep the baby despite the father refusing to help and despite having no financial or parental support. She is intelligent, and I believe she would have found a stable career and marriage if she had not become pregnant unexpectedly. Now she is a single mother on welfare with a child who has special needs, living in a small town in northern Arizona. Story 65. I worked at an electronics store in Canada in the early 2000s. It was like Circuit City, but not the same. We had a customer service manager who had been highly valued for years. Once, when a customer returned a large-screen television, instead of canceling the delivery, he changed the delivery address to his own house. He lost his job and tens of thousands of dollars in wages after stealing a $3,000 television in a way that was essentially certain to get him caught. He knew the computer system like the back of his hand and how easily he would be caught. Story 66. Both my mother and my mother-in-law ruined their retirements by marrying and divorcing multiple times. We cannot always control what happens in our marriages. People change and sometimes make terrible decisions or become toxic. Marrying the first person who comes along after a divorce is asking for trouble. Fear of being alone is a powerful drug. Story 67. My best friend in high school was very rich. His grandfather was an entrepreneur, and his mother grew up flying with him to the beach house on weekends in their private plane. Neither of the children in the next generation, his mother or his uncle, ever really worked. The whole family was unable to keep its finances together. His mother had a great deal of energy and drive, but she used it on running the private school's parent-teacher association like it was a full-time job while never actually holding a full-time job. To be fair, if she had not been so integral to the school community, my friend would have been expelled. He was consistently a D student even though every adult did everything possible to help him succeed academically. He was a classic overprivileged kid turned up to 11. He was the nicest guy, could make a friend for life in 10 minutes, but he was chronically late and lazy. He attended 4 different colleges and universities over 5 years and still did not manage to finish a degree. Eventually, with his grandfather gone, everyone spending money, and no one working, the situation caught up with them. My friend's mother borrowed his inheritance, and that money disappeared. Plenty of people succeed with less, but he was not able to succeed with everything handed to him, and hardship did not make him successful. He never drank or used drugs, but he largely lazed his way into and out of a series of temporary, off-the-books jobs. It is not describable any other way. He failed through laziness, chronic lateness, and always prioritizing other things above work. I eventually had to stop talking to him because every conversation was about how his mother ruined his life. She definitely ruined her own life, but she had made sure he had every possible advantage. I have not been in contact for about 10 years, and I miss my funny, charming friend from school, but I cannot watch him keep blaming others for his failure to thrive. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.